Good afternoon. This is the Sunday edition of the Tropical Weather Update from 28storms.com and the Hurricane Tracker app on this June 17th, 2012. Today, the Hurricane Center is monitoring a broad area of low pressure centered near Bermuda, but it's only being given a 10% chance of development, and this low pressure area is moving more toward the northeast and away from land. So not only is the development potential limited, but it's also moving out to sea and away from land, so we're not concerned about this feature. And an area of shower and thunderstorm activity just off the Mexican coast is also being given a 20% chance of development, but the upper level conditions do not appear to be favorable, so we're not that optimistic about development in the eastern Pacific over the next several days. So the two main features that we are currently monitoring is the monsoon trough draped across Central America into southern Mexico. This monsoon trough is going to slowly lift more toward the north into the Bay of Campeche and western Gulf of Mexico, and we also have this tropical wave moving across the Caribbean. At this time, it's between Hispaniola and Cuba, and as you will see, the convective activity is on the rise. Today's visible satellite animation shows that the convective activity across the western hemisphere tropics is continuing to increase, and this has been a noted trend over the past week, likely attributed to the favorable pulse of the Madden-Julian oscillation sweeping across this area. And you can see the tropical wave. It's poorly defined, but it's helping to enhance convection along this mid to upper level trough that you see draped all the way into Mexico, and this is also helping to add convection to the monsoon trough over some of the inland areas. The enhanced infrared also shows the convection increase just to the east of Jamaica fairly well, but upper level winds remain unfavorable for development in the near future. As you can see, we have that jet streak just streaking across the western and central Caribbean, so no development as anticipated over the next 48 to 72 hours. The University of Wisconsin shear charts also show the mid to upper level trough diving into the western Atlantic and U.S. eastern seaboard, and toward the south we have 40 to 50 knots of vertical wind shear centered near Jamaica, and that is why no development is anticipated. The following is the latest look at the precipitable water animation for the Atlantic Basin. We still see the tropical wave and associated moisture plume moving from east to west across the Caribbean. It's also bringing this monsoon low more toward the northwest. But one of the problems now with the forecast of at least western Gulf of Mexico potential is that some of the latest guidance is now indicating that this eastern seaboard trough is diving in a little bit too far toward the south, and it's going to help capture some of this Caribbean energy, and instead of all of this going into the Gulf of Mexico, some of it is going to get sheared more toward the north. So the energy is going to get split between going up the east coast and into the southwest Gulf. The latest 12Z run of the CMC model is showing a rather extreme alternative to the scenario that we've been talking about for the past week or so. Instead of showing development in the western Gulf like it has been persistently showing for several runs, it is now showing the bulk of the Caribbean energy getting drawn up toward the north and then developing into a subtropical or tropical storm as it starts to impact the outer banks of North Carolina by days 5 and 6. While we do believe that a lot of the energy will get captured by the trough, the CMC, like we said, is probably going a little bit too overboard with that type of scenario. Meanwhile, the GFS model, although it's no longer showing Gulf development, is still showing 2/3 of the energy still being captured underneath the ridge that builds over the central United States, so much of the tropical wave still makes it into the central and western Gulf. And even though that it's showing nothing more than a broad area of low pressure as we go into days 6 and 7, this is still something that will have to be monitored as it heads in the general direction of northern Mexico and southern Texas. The third model of choice is the ECMWF, and we're not going in order because of course the European model is by far the most accurate on average at least. And as we go into 24, 48, and 72 hours, you see that the tropical wave energy has been able to push into the central and eastern Gulf of Mexico, but it's elongated from northeast to southwest, and that is just good evidence that this model is also showing some of that energy getting drawn toward the north. And as we go into the middle and second half of this upcoming week, the rain chances across central and southern Florida will begin to rebound. In fact, I looked at some of the latest forecasts from the Weather Service, and the general probabilities are 40 to 50% on a daily basis. So some of this energy will make it into the Bahamas and West Atlantic, but we're still going to be left with at least a broad area of low pressure across the Gulf of Mexico as we go into day 6, and this is exactly what the European model is still showing, with the 1008 millibar centered low just to the east of Tampico, Mexico. And as we go into day 8 and day 9, this energy is still in the western Gulf, And finally, by day 10, we're still seeing some showers moving into southern Texas and the Mexican mainland. So compared to yesterday, the odds of development in the Gulf of Mexico have decreased, but we're still going to be monitoring the wave axis as it begins to move more toward the west. This is the latest GFS initialized shear pattern, and as we talked about earlier, the westerly shear is still there, but as we go into 24 and 48 hours, an upper level ridge is forecast to start developing over the Yucatan Peninsula, so the tropical wave will still be moving partly underneath this upper level ridge. And by day 5, the GFS is still showing a robust area of upper level divergence. So if the tropical wave can get its act together more than what the models are anticipating, we can still at least count on the fact that the upper level ridging and favorable conditions aloft will still be there, and that is the reason why we're still going to be monitoring this area very closely during the middle and second half of this upcoming week. Meanwhile, we're also going to monitor the East Coast in the event that some of that energy does start to organize to the east of Daytona, but as of right now, the models are depicting an upper level low to also be in place to the east of the Carolinas, so if anything were to even attempt to form, it would have to be subtropical, or else it would more than likely get sheared to pieces. And finally, this is a look at the ECMWF shear forecast beginning at 24 hours, and you don't really see much at day 1 or the day 2 forecast, but here we go moving into 72 hours, and if we take note of some of the streamlines and vectors, an upper level ridge, much like the GFS, is forecast to begin to develop just to the southeast of Cozumel, and this upper level ridge is forecast to continue retrograding toward the west by days 4 and day 5. So the bottom line is that the central and western Gulf will still be the area of primary interest to watch for any tropical development as we go into the middle and second half of the week. And in the meantime, beginning Tuesday and Wednesday, some of this tropical moisture will get drawn into southern Florida, which will allow for those daily rain chances to increase by about 10 to 20%. So that is all for this afternoon. Check back again for more 28 storms updates, especially later this afternoon and evening, because in addition to the tropics, we're also monitoring the northern plains for tornado potential today. It looks as though storms will be initiating rather soon, and so that will be the focus over the next several hours. So thanks again for stopping by, and keep it tuned for more updates.